Diane Sawyer spoke with Whitney Houston for exactly 67 minutes on December 2, 2002. The cameras captured a confession that would become cultural legend. But what they missed was the complete psychological destruction of America's most beloved voice. When Whitney Houston declared "Crack is whack" to 20 million viewers, the world saw defiance and strength. What they didn't see was a woman so broken that she could barely hold herself together long enough to deliver the performance that would define her final decade. This is the untold story of those 67 minutes and the devastating 20 minutes afterward that still haunts Diane Sawyer today. The day began at 6 a.m. in Whitney's Plaza Hotel suite. She had been awake since 4, chain-smoking Marlboro lights and staring at her reflection in the marble bathroom mirror. Her hands shook as she tried to apply concealer under her eyes, attempting to hide the dark circles that told the story of too many sleepless nights, too many pills, too much Bobby Brown. Each stroke of makeup felt like war paint for a battle she knew she couldn't win. Nancy Seltzer, her longtime publicist, had been calling every hour since midnight with last-minute coaching. "Remember, Whitney, this is about redemption. This is about showing America you're back. This is about the music, not the tabloids." But Whitney wasn't back. Whitney was barely there at all. She had lost 30 pounds in the last 6 months, and her once glorious frame now looked fragile, almost breakable. At 7:30 a.m., Whitney's black Mercedes pulled up to ABC Studios on West 66th Street. The building loomed over her like a courthouse where she was about to face judgment for crimes she wasn't sure she could stop committing. Her driver, Marcus, who had been chauffeuring celebrities for 20 years, looked at her in the rearview mirror with genuine concern. "Miss Houston, you don't have to do this. We can turn around right now." Whitney met his eyes in the mirror, and for a moment, the mask she had been perfecting for weeks slipped completely away. "Yes, Marcus, I do, because if I don't tell my story, they'll make up their own, and their version will be worse than my truth." But as those words left her lips, Whitney wondered if that was actually possible. Could any fictional story be worse than what she was about to confess to America? The ABC lobby felt like a funeral home. Quiet, reverent, filled with people speaking in hushed tones about something precious that was dying. Whitney signed in at the security desk, her once bold signature now barely recognizable, shaky and uncertain. The security guard, Jerome, an older black man who had worked the building for 15 years, recognized her immediately despite her dramatic weight loss. "Miss Houston, I just want you to know, my wife Beverly and I, we've loved your voice since the very beginning. You gave us greatest love of all at our wedding. You got this, superstar." Whitney smiled at him, the first genuine emotion she had shown all morning. It was a smile that reminded Jerome of the radiant young woman who had first appeared on television 20 years earlier. "Thank you, Jerome. Would you do me a favor? Would you pray for me today?" Jerome nodded solemnly. "Already started, Miss Houston. Been praying since I heard you were coming." As Whitney walked toward the elevators, Jerome called after her one more time. "Miss Houston." She turned, her Chanel jacket hanging loose on her diminished frame. "My wife Beverly, she always tells people you got the voice of an angel. Don't let nobody tell you different. Angels can heal, but first they got to acknowledge they're wounded." Whitney's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back furiously. Angels, she thought bitterly. If only Jerome knew what this particular angel had been doing in hotel bathrooms and recording studio closets. If only he knew that the voice of an angel had been silenced by substances that had no business being anywhere near something so sacred. The elevator ride to the 8th floor felt like ascending to heaven or descending to hell, and Whitney genuinely couldn't tell which direction she was traveling. Floor by floor, she felt pieces of her carefully constructed armor falling away. By the time those brass doors opened, she felt naked in every way that mattered, exposed and vulnerable and completely unprepared for what was about to happen to her life. Standing in the hallway was Diane Sawyer herself, looking polished and professional in the way that only master journalists can manage. She wore a navy blue suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and her blonde hair was styled in that perfect television anchor way that never moved, no matter what happened. "Whitney, thank you so much for doing this. I know this isn't easy." Diane's handshake was firm and warm, but her eyes were already working, already studying, already preparing for the surgical precision she would need to extract truth from one of entertainment's most guarded figures. Even in those first moments of greeting, Diane could sense that this wasn't going to be just another celebrity interview designed to promote an album or rehabilitate a damaged image. This was going to be something much more dangerous, much more real. This was going to be an autopsy performed on a living legend, broadcast live to America. The makeup room became Whitney's final sanctuary before the execution. For exactly 45 minutes, she sat in that leather chair while Rosa, a talented makeup artist who had been working for ABC for 15 years, performed miracles with brushes and powders and concealers. Rosa had seen every kind of celebrity breakdown imaginable during her tenure at the network. She had painted faces over black eyes, covered needle tracks with foundation, and made alcoholics look sober enough for prime time. But she had never encountered anything quite like Whitney Houston that December morning. "Honey, when's the last time you had a real meal?" Rosa asked gently, her experienced hands working to fill in the hollow spaces beneath Whitney's cheekbones that makeup could barely disguise. "I can bring you something from craft services. Maybe some fruit, some yogurt." Whitney stared at her reflection in the ring of professional lights surrounding the mirror. When had her face become so angular, so sharp? When had her eyes become so deep-set, so haunted by shadows that no amount of concealer could hide? "I can't remember the last time I was hungry for food," Whitney whispered, her voice barely audible above the hum of the air conditioning. "I don't remember a lot of things anymore, Rosa. Time just slides by now. Days blend into nights, blend into days." Rosa's hands paused in their work. In 15 years of preparing celebrities for television appearances, she had learned to recognize the signs of someone who was drowning in their own life. "Baby girl, are you going to be okay out there? Because if you're not ready, they can reschedule. Diane Sawyer will understand. Everyone will understand." Whitney met Rosa's concerned eyes in the mirror, and for a moment she considered telling the truth. She considered saying that no, she wasn't going to be okay, that she hadn't been okay in so long she had forgotten what okay felt like. She considered admitting that she was about to walk into that studio and confess things that would destroy what remained of her career, her marriage, and possibly her life. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and summoned the performer that had carried her through 2 decades of show business. "Rosa, I'm going to sit in that chair and I'm going to tell Diane Sawyer exactly who I am. Not who I was, not who I'm supposed to be, but who I actually am right now. Because lying about it is what got me here, and maybe telling the truth is what gets me out." But even as she spoke those words with conviction, Whitney suspected that truth might be the thing that finally destroyed her completely. At 10:55 a.m., 5 minutes before the cameras would begin rolling, Whitney Houston was escorted into Studio 2 and took her place in the chair that would become her confessional. The studio was smaller than she had expected, more intimate, which somehow made everything more terrifying. This wasn't a concert stage where she could hide behind lights and distance and the roar of adoring crowds. This was close-up, personal, nowhere to run. She could see every freckle on Diane Sawyer's face, could smell her expensive perfume, could feel the weight of those intelligent blue eyes, studying her like a specimen under a microscope. The transformation that occurred in those final moments before filming was something to behold. Whitney's spine straightened like a steel rod, her shoulders squared with military precision. Her million-dollar smile returned to her face as if summoned by some internal command. For 20 years she had been trained to become Whitney Houston on cue, and that training activated now like muscle memory. But Diane Sawyer, positioning herself across the coffee table that separated their chairs, noticed something crucial that the cameras wouldn't catch. Whitney's hands never stopped moving, not nervous fidgeting or celebrity preening, but constant, subtle motion, as if she were trying to physically hold herself together, one gesture at a time. Her fingers drummed against her thigh, smoothed her skirt, adjusted her hair, touched her necklace, in an endless cycle of movement that spoke of profound internal chaos. This wasn't going to be an interview about music or movies or celebrity gossip. This was going to be a public breakdown disguised as a conversation, and everyone in that studio could sense it. At exactly 11 a.m., the red light on camera 1 illuminated, and Whitney Houston began delivering what would become the most devastating performance of her entire career. The cameras rolled, and Whitney Houston immediately transformed into the greatest actress who never won an Oscar, not because she was pretending to be someone else, but because she was pretending to still be Whitney Houston. The opening questions were gentle, almost motherly. Diane knew exactly how to make her subjects comfortable before she began the real surgery. Let's talk about the new album, Whitney. Just Whitney. Tell me about that title. Whitney's media training kicked in like autopilot. Well, Diane, I wanted to show people the real me. Not the superstar, not the icon, just Whitney. Just the woman who loves music and loves her family and is trying to figure out who she is in this crazy world. The lies flowed so smoothly, so effortlessly, that for a brief moment even Whitney believed them. This was 2 decades of practice talking, 2 decades of protecting the brand, 2 decades of being Whitney Houston instead of being Whitney. But Diane Sawyer hadn't built her reputation by accepting surface answers, and after 10 minutes of pleasant conversation about music and motherhood, she leaned forward with the predatory grace of a skilled hunter. Whitney, I have to ask you directly, and I hope you'll be honest with our audience. Are you using drugs? The question detonated in the studio like a bomb. For exactly 3 seconds, Whitney's carefully constructed facade crumbled completely. In those 3 seconds, 20 million viewers could see terror and exhaustion and something approaching relief wash across her face. Then her survival instincts activated, and she rebuilt her armor in real time, right there on national television. First of all, let's get one thing straight. Crack is cheap. I make too much money to ever smoke crack. Let's get that straight, okay? We don't do crack. We don't do that. Crack is whack. The words erupted from her mouth with such conviction, such righteous indignation, that they seemed to surprise even Whitney herself. She had meant to deflect, to minimize, to dance around the truth the way celebrities always did. Instead, she had created what would become the most quoted soundbite of her entire career. But what America saw was defiance and strength. What they missed was the sound of Whitney Houston's soul cracking along with her voice. Diane pressed deeper, sensing blood in the water. So what do you do? Whitney's confidence began to crumble like a house built on sand. I have. Look, I've made mistakes. I've tried things. Marijuana, alcohol, some other stuff. But I'm not perfect, Diane. I never claimed to be perfect. But I'm definitely not a crackhead. Each word was a confession wrapped in denial, truth disguised as defense. She talked about substances like they were vitamins, about Bobby Brown like he was her salvation instead of her destruction, about their marriage like it was a love story instead of a mutual suicide pact being broadcast as reality television entertainment. But underneath every carefully crafted answer, Diane could hear something else entirely. She could hear the sound of a woman drowning in her own life, going under for the 3rd time, reaching for anything that might save her even as she knew she was already lost. The conversation continued for another 40 minutes, but the real tragedy wasn't in what Whitney said about drugs or Bobby or her struggles with fame. The real tragedy was in what she couldn't say, what no amount of media training had prepared her to articulate. She couldn't say that she woke up every morning surprised to be alive. She couldn't say that she had forgotten what her own voice sounded like when she wasn't high. She couldn't say that she looked at her 13-year-old daughter Bobby Christina and saw her own destruction reflected in those innocent brown eyes. She couldn't say that Whitney Houston, the person, had died years ago, and what was sitting in that chair was just the ghost, going through the motions of being human. When Diane asked about Bobby Christina, Whitney's performance reached its most heartbreaking peak. "She's my angel, Diane. She's my reason for everything. She's the only pure thing left in my life." For the first time in the entire interview, Whitney was telling the complete unvarnished truth, and the authenticity of it was devastating to witness. "Are you concerned about being a good example for her?" Diane asked, and the question hit Whitney like a physical blow. The mask slipped again, and for a moment, viewers could see straight through to her broken heart. "I am her mother. I love my daughter more than my own life, more than my career, more than anything that exists in this world." Real tears formed in her eyes, threatening to destroy her makeup and her composure and the last vestiges of control she was clinging to. At minute 67, Diane said, "Whitney, thank you. That took real courage." The cameras stopped rolling, the studio lights dimmed to half power, and Whitney Houston, the performer, died right there in that chair. But the real devastation was just beginning. The moment those cameras stopped, Whitney didn't just remove her mask, she shattered it into 1,000 pieces, each fragment drawing blood as it fell. She sat motionless for a full minute, staring at nothing, her breathing becoming rapid and shallow. "Did I just commit suicide?" she whispered to the production crew cleaning up around her. "Did I really just kill myself on national television?" Diane approached her carefully. "Whitney, are you okay?" Whitney looked up with eyes so empty they seemed like portals to despair itself. "Diane, I think I just destroyed everything I spent 20 years building. I think I just ended Whitney Houston." The real breakdown happened when Whitney tried to stand up. Her legs gave out completely, and she collapsed back into the chair, sobbing with such raw anguish that grown men on the production crew had to turn away. This wasn't celebrity crying for the cameras. This was the sound of a human soul disintegrating in real time. When the interview aired on December 4, 2002, "Crack is Whack" became an instant cultural phenomenon. But what America missed was the sound of a woman's spirit breaking. Within 24 hours, concert cancellations began. Radio stations quietly stopped playing her music. The woman who had once been America's sweetheart became America's most tragic cautionary tale, all because she had told the truth. And that truth killed her, slowly but surely, over the next 10 years until she was found dead in a Beverly Hills hotel bathtub, surrounded by the wreckage of a life that had become unmanageable. The road from Crack is Whack to Whitney's death was paved with the broken pieces of the woman who sat in that chair on December 2, 2002, and chose honesty over survival.